Hey guys, it's Mark, and welcome back to Axe the Builder. Today we're going to talk about the right way to change a set of strings and how to set up a Floyd Rose equipped guitar. Okay, so for the tools for this, we're going to need a 6-inch rule, stainless steel, whatever. Make sure it's metal, not plastic. Phillips head screwdriver, a number 3 metric Allen key, and a number 2.5 metric Allen key. And last but not least, the key. And we'll come back to that later and where you can get one of these things, because it's a God saves when you decide to do your intonation on a Floyd Rose. First thing we're going to do is make sure that the base plate of the Floyd Rose is parallel to the body of the guitar. So we're going to turn this up here. Now, if you look at this carefully, you'll see that there's a slight tilt up here. It's not perfectly parallel with the top of the body. It's a little bit higher in the back side here than it is on the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and adjust that to bring it to the point where it's nice and flush. And you should do that with your old strings before you change them. Each time you play with the springs on the back, you're going to change the tension on the Floyd, and your guitar is going to go out of tune. So the first thing we're going to do before we start playing with the springs in the back is we're going to unlock all the hold down nuts up at the nut. Okay, so the number 3 metric wrench on the Floyd Rose is what you need to unlock that, but we'll also keep this out because you'll need it later when you're doing the string lockdowns at the bridge as well, because they use the same size Allen key for that as well. So just loosen them off so that the Allen screws are loose enough that you can now use your tuners to adjust the tuning on your guitar. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the back here, and because the bridge plate was a little bit high off the body, in other words it wasn't parallel, what we're going to do is we're going to tighten the tension in the screws to bring that down. Now just do a couple turns, not too many, then go back and retune your guitar. The other thing is if the bodies or the bridge plate is actually in the opposite direction and is resting on top of the body or on a negative angle back into the body cavity, some of the Floyds have a cavity that's actually cut out here, then what you want to do is you want to actually loosen the spring tension so that it raises up. Now each time you do this, you have to retune the guitar, check if it's parallel with the body, and then if it's not, then continue to do that adjustment a few times until you get it nice and level with the top of the body. Okay, so we've already done all that. This is all nice and set up now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take all the tension off this string, and we're going to take it off, and we'll show you some of the little things that you need to do. When you're changing strings on a Floyd Rose, don't take them all off at the same time. If you do that, the spring tension in the back of the cavity is going to cause it to pop loose from the holding screws here, or height adjustment posts that hold the Floyd in place. So do one string at a time, and once you get them all installed, then what we'll do is we'll look at how you do the intonation. One thing I like to do if I'm changing strings is, instead of leaving the hold down nuts on there, is I take them all off. It just makes your life a lot easier when you're changing strings. It's pretty it's not the easiest thing to try and thread that between the two of them. So okay, so we got the string off this end, and we're going to take it off at the bridge position now. Okay, using the same number 3 metric wrench, what you want to do is just loosen or slack off the hold down screw. So you want to be able to just loosen this with your hands or with your fingers, okay, and pull the string out. One of the things you got to be really careful with a Floyd is, you'll see how this thing moves. That's the string keeper. That thing is loose in there. If you're not careful and you turn your guitar over with your strings out, there's a good chance it'll fall out. So be careful, don't lose it. You're in for a world of hurt if you're trying to find replacement parts for this thing. Okay, so one step that we have to do now, and this has to do with giving you as much tuner adjustability afterwards, is you want to screw the middle ones in almost till they're all the way down. So on a 6 string, you screw the middle 4 ones down. If you're on a 7 string, then screw the middle 5. And we're going to work with the 2 outside microtuners right now. The idea being is we set the height on these to give you the same amount of adjustability to screwing it in as you have screwing it out. So it's about midway in the travel. What that does is, keep in mind, these microtuners, when you're doing your tuning, are pushing down on the string holders. And by doing so, actually pulls back the saddle. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see how the saddle's moving. And that's how you get your micro adjustment for tuning on a Floyd. So you want to set the 2 outside ones to give you as much tuning ability for both a sharp and a flat, if you're sharp or flat, on your guitar. So what we're going to do is we're going to screw these in all the way and then back them out so that you have the same amount of thread above the plate here, the same amount of space here as you've got from the top of the hold down screw to the underside of the bridge plate. So we're just going to set that. And we're just about there. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other outside one. So once you have the 2 outside ones set, take your 6-inch rule, lay it across the top, over the top of the 2 outside ones, and then slowly bring the middle ones up so that they're just touching the underside of your rule. That way you know that they're all exactly at the same height, and you're going to have the same amount of adjustability to fix a sharp string or a flat string on each one of the microtuners. One cool thing about these microtuners, if you're playing songs where you're going to be using a drop D tuning on any of them, the low E or the bass E gives you enough flexibility if you screw it all the way down to back it out and still be able to maintain an open D or an open E in this position, and we'll cover that a little bit later. Okay, so the first thing you do with a new string before you get it installed is you need to take off the ball end to install it into the string holder. So start a little bit far, about 1.5 inches away from the end of the ball end and just cut it off. And that gives you your brand new string end to insert into the string holder. So we're going to install it, and then just use your fingers to tighten it and make sure that it's right in the middle and in line with the groove that's going to be required in the saddle. And then slowly tighten it. Now, don't tighten it too much. You don't need a lot of tension here to get a string to hold in place. So pull the string over. In this case, it's a Fender style key, so put it in. Start tightening. Just my personal preference. You don't need to put 3 full windings on here, but I still do it. I like to have that tuning stability. So that one's done. So repeat the same process on all the strings one at a time. Change each string, lock them down, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the key to do intonation. So this is the key. This is the thing that saved me a hell of a lot of gray hairs. There's a number of makers. This one I got from Stu Mac. It makes life a lot easier when you're doing intonation on a Floyd. The biggest problem with a Floyd is there's no adjustment screws. I mean, everybody looks at these and thinks that the hold down screws are actually the adjustment screws, but there are no adjustment screws for moving the saddle forwards and backwards for doing intonation. If you try and cheat on it and slacken off the hold down screw that holds the saddle in place while the string's on tension, it's going to pull this whole assembly forward and throw you completely out of intonation. Then you're fighting string tension and trying to force it back. So 9 times out of 10, you end up detuning the string, moving the saddle to where you think it's going to be, relocking it down, tuning the string back up, and then checking your intonation, and I can guarantee it's going to be off. Unless you're really, really good or lucky. So I went out and I invested in one of these things, and what it does is it works exactly like the adjustment screw on a saddle on a traditional type Strat bridge. It allows you to move the adjusting screw in and out away from the backing plate, and it gives you that fine adjustment that you need to do the intonation. It slips on very easily. If I can get it now, it's probably going to give me trouble. But that's it. It just slips in place there. And if you can see here, it hooks onto the back of the bridge plate here. And the screw which runs under, or the bracket that runs off of the screw here, lines up and hooks onto the back. As I tighten this, you'll see it hooks onto the back of the hold down screw that holds, or the fine tuning screw, and the hold down screw that holds the saddle in place, or the string in place. So as you can see here, here's the open string, and we're at an open E here. Then when I hit this, you can see we're flat on the intonation on this particular saddle. So we're going to adjust the saddle using the key. To do that, you need the other Allen key, which is the 2.5 metric. And what you want to do is slacken that off. I've already applied tension on here, so it's not going to slide forward. And we'll just slacken that off. It moved a bit anyways. So there we go. So let's start. Let's tune this to pitch. We'll start by bringing this back to get it back, because it was already in tune. So there. We're back at E, open E. Almost there. What I'm actually doing is slacking it off and moving the saddle forward right now. So repeat these steps until you get all 6 strings done. Each time, take that off, move it over, slacken it off. Don't forget to retighten the hold down each time. One thing that's neat with the Floyd, I don't know if you can see it here, but you can see there's actually 2 hold down positions for each of the screws here. So it gives you more than ample travel here. So if you get to the end of the travel on one while you're doing your intonation and you're hitting on the hold down screw, then just slacken it off and move it to the forward position. Same thing when you're going in the opposite direction. If you're getting too close to the end of it, like this one's pretty close here, then just take it off and move it to the back one. Don't forget, when you're moving the saddles, move it forward for flat and move it back for sharp. So we've changed all the strings on here. We've completed all the intonation. The bridge is floating nicely. All the strings have been changed. So now we're going to reinstall the hold downs at the nut. Okay, one thing that's key about these hold downs that you got to be careful of when we're putting them back on if you take them off is, you can see here on this side it's all nice and flat. But if I turn it around, you see here it's actually got a concaveness in it. And that's because it's following the concave that the string follows in the piece that's inserted at the end of the nut. So make sure when you install it that you've got them set in right, or else you're going to do damage to the underside of the hold down. You put big grooves in it, and then also you won't get the proper hold down, and you won't get it nice and tight across the whole length of the string. So your string pattern is, your string direction is like this. Again, take your number 3 metric Allen wrench and just get them set in there. Don't tighten them too much yet. You want to be able to tune them with the tuner or with your tuning pegs. We'll tune everything to pitch now. Now when you're setting these down to finally lock them in place, do them in steps and retune each 2 strings as you're doing it to give yourself as much adjustment on the micro tuners that you'll have. If I take this and I yank down on this and tighten them up all the way right now, you'll see the B is now way sharp and the E is sharp as well. So what I like to do is loosen it off a little bit and just until you start getting a little bit of tension on the strings themselves, but they still can be played with the tuners on the end. Bring them back to tune. You spend a lot of time doing a whole bunch of setup at the back of the bridge to get the maximum amount of adjustment out of your micro tuners. Why throw all that away? So get it to tune, tighten it up a little bit more, and then lock it down. Repeat the same thing for the other strings, and then do one last tuning using the micro tuners, and you're all set. You're all done. That's it for this episode of Axe the Builder. You can follow everything that is on film here. You can find on loudguitars.com at Axe the Builder. And thanks for coming by.
Today's show is brought to you by Hellwires, Picks, and Accessories.